Welcome everybody, my name is Trick, and today we're going to be talking about a different kind of video than what I usually do. As you guys know, I usually make PvP guides for every single one of the weapons, balance, nerfs, buffs, and stuff like that. But I feel the need to make this video because there is simply so much hate, and honestly, there's a lot of justified disappointment going around. So for the first time ever, I'm just going to sit here and talk about the actual state of the game. As some of you know, I have been playing and streaming New World full-time since almost the very release. I'm sitting right now at about 8,500 hours, which it's way too many. And I think I have an understanding on what it is to come, right? I've been in the game through every single one of the ups and every single one of the downs. And yeah, I will tell you guys the reason why I think we are in the current state, and like I said, on what it is to come. But without making this any longer, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And let's start with the current state of the game. And let's be real, it's not good. It's not good at all. We have way too many bugs. Some bugs have been there since the very beginning of the game. We got some new ones and some returning one. The rewards suck for every single one of the activities in the game. There's no real replayable content other than OPR. We'll get to that in a second. We also have mutations, but they're not challenging at all. If you have been playing the game for a while now, they're only challenging for like a brand new player. We also have the sandworm, which is the biggest PvE content that they have given us, like the biggest challenge, and it doesn't give us any reward. It just gives us some old, outdated, low-level reward that is irrelevant for anybody that wants to play it, right? We also have the 10-man trials, which they introduce some artifacts in there to make people play it, but the moment that you're done getting the artifact, you never want to be there ever again, right? Because there's no reason for you to do it. Why? Because there's no real rewards in it, right? There's no real rewards. It would just be a waste of time. We also have PvP arenas, but they completely kill that mode by reducing the experience that you get from it, essentially reducing the rewards you get from it, making it completely obsolete since there is no ranking, there is no cosmetic rewards, and there's no real leaderboard for arenas, right? And speaking of leaderboard, they did make a leaderboard, but for other than mutation competition, the leaderboard, it's a joke for everything else, right? Because it essentially rewards who has the most amount of time to play the game as opposed as who has the most skill at that specific event, right? And that is a joke. Whenever you reward somebody that can play the game for 18 hours a day as opposed to somebody that can play the game for a little bit of time but they can put a lot of hard effort into it, it makes no sense to me, right? We also have the same OPR since the very beginning of the game, which you can guess it has no real reward. And this is the most played activity in the game. And honestly, the reason why people play it so much is because there's absolutely nothing else to do. If you want PvP, that's it, right? Arenas are dead. Open world PvP is pretty much dead. Wars are a joke that only the same people get to do it over again. And it's just an ego ride. The influence races, they happen way too late at night. So the majority of the players also don't get to participate. So yes, OPR is the one that people do all the time just because there's nothing else to do. And because of all of these things that I just mentioned, it's why right now we are sitting at the lowest population numbers ever recorded. And now let me be clear. This doesn't mean that the game right now it's in a worse version of what the game was on release, because it's not. It is better in almost every single aspect of the game, right? Is it in a good state? No, it's not, right? It has all of these bugs, the lack of content, the lack of rewards, no replayability content, but it is a million times better than what some of you might remember whenever you played the game a year ago, 2 years ago, right? The only reason why it's in such a bad state right now is because of the things that I mentioned, right? No in-game content, and we still have lingering bugs and stuff like that. But it is a great game, all right? It is a great game that it will get better, but we're gonna get to that in a second. But yes, there is a reason, honestly, why we are in the dire situation that we are right now. And I don't think that is because of developers neglect or because the developers are not good enough. And for us to find out why we are in the situation that we are right now, we need to actually go back to the release of New World. When New World first came out in September of 2021, it was released as a finished product. But in reality, it was nowhere near release conditions. After playing the game now for almost, for the past almost 3 years, we're finally getting close to a finished product. So the initial release of the game was a beta at best. And it wasn't even the final beta. It was like middle of the pack beta, right? It was filled with bugs, exploit, dupings, and game breaking mechanics. And there wasn't enough. There was actually zero content at the time. There was absolutely nothing, right? There was no arenas, no battlegrounds, OPRs, right? There were no raids. There were 2 max level dungeons that once you get to level 60, that was it. Only 2 dungeons, Genesis and Lazarus. The only thing that was exciting and enticing was wars, which only a small percentage of the players got to participate whenever they were like between level 50 and 60, just because they needed the numbers. And the only repeatable activity at the time was ECR, or Elite Chess Run, right? And these were things you did at max level. So not everybody got there, because the elite trains you only did them once you got to max level. It was not an early level thing, which only less than 20% of the population that bought New World got to achieve. If we bring the achievements here, you can see that about 80% of all of the players that bought this game didn't even get to max level. And that is big. That is huge. Whenever you have, let's say, 1 million people that are playing your game, and that is not the people that actually bought the game. It was millions of copies that they sold. But whenever all of these millions of players don't even get to your late game, to your end game, then there's a problem, right? 100% there is a problem with there. And the reason why people didn't get to max level is because it was incredibly boring to level up. There was no cinematics, there were no cutscenes, there was no real lore that the players could get attached to, and there was no story to follow, right? Plus, we have a bunch of dupings. The abilities were not working, like Fireball going through the ground. There were people abusing exploits that were one-shotting people with like the hatchet and stuff like that. There were so many game-breaking bugs that if you combine that with the mundane level and experience and the lack of content there was, it was not fun, right? It was not fun. That right there was the main reason why 80% of the players quit before reaching even max level. So HGS noticed this, right? Obviously they noticed. And for the past 2 years and 9 months, while giving a little bit of, like end game content here and there, just to keep the player base, the remaining player base somewhat, busy or like happy, right? All of their focus has been in creating a new and fresh, engaging level and experience. Because if people will quit before reaching max level, then what is the point in making end-game content that no one will get to, And it makes perfect sense. New player retention is possibly one of the most important aspects of any game. You buy the game, you have a lot of fun at the beginning, you have a great experience, and then you recommend it to another friend and they buy the game, and it just continues to repeat, right? If you buy a game, the game is boring within the first 20-30 minutes, then you're simply going to quit, get a refund, not recommended to your friends. And to be fair, the new level and experience is amazing. It has a lot of cinematics, it has a lot of cutscenes, even from the very beginning of the game. It also has a storyline which is very easy to follow. You can level up easily by just following the MSQ. You don't need to do like side quests, like a bunch of them. You don't need to run all over the place. You also get mounts once you get to level 20. That way you can go from one place to another much quicker, so less boring traveling around the world. Every single one of the NPCs is now voice acted. The leveling zones have been revamped all the way from 1 to 65. And if you compare this new level and experience with the one that we had, right? It's astronomically better. It's so much better. And also, if you ask a new player that started playing New World like not too long ago, what do they think about the game, like after all of these new leveling experience have been revamped. And they say, I love it. I honestly love it, and I cannot wait to get to max level. I'm not even max level yet, and I'm having an amazing time. So it worked, you know, it worked. The worst part of the game, they made it better, and it worked. It's so much better. They put all of their focus in their weakest aspect of the game, and it's now one of the best, if not the strongest aspect of the game. But that came out at a cost, right? In the process of them putting most of their time and efforts into making the best possible leveling experience, they sort of neglected the veteran players and deprived them of a lot of content and a lot of bug fixes, right? And for the longest time, most of the in-game content that comes with every season is very limited. It's immediately exhausted because it has no sustenance. It's either a small lore quest chain that you finish within 20 minutes, or it's just a new dungeon that once you do it a couple of times, you're done with it. And yeah, you do those things, and once you're finishing this new content that they just gave you, guess what you do? You go back to OPRs or back to arenas. Well, arenas not anymore, but then you go back to the same thing that you have been doing for the past 2 years. Right, and they don't even give us a goddamn new map. You know, it's been the same map, and the only real content that we had at the release of season 3, even though the season 3 was quite a nice expansion, you know, with the new zones, the implementation of the mounts. For me, it was the artifacts, the artifact equipment. As dumb as it sounds, the artifact farming and the new build that you can make with it, the new metas and things like that you can create with the artifact, has given us enough reason to play like the old content, like go back to the old content and replay them so we can get the artifact. It sounds pretty dumb because you're doing it only for the artifact, but at least it made players do something else other than just OPR. All right, you either, you know, spam arenas or go in the open world and kill bosses. And it was fun until it wasn't, right? Because that also had its own fault. Some of the artifacts were incredibly hard to get, especially the PvP track ones, right? And once people got the ones from like the open world, they will never go back to it. So what happened is, whenever a new artifact is released, everybody wants to get this artifact. Once the majority of the player base gets this artifact, then either a new player or a returning player that goes to these places to get the artifact, well, guess what? Nobody's there to farm it. So it's essentially and almost impossible for them to get it, right? They go there and they have no chance on killing these bosses alone. While it was good, it was a good piece of content and a nice addition to the game, it had a terrible implementation. People got tired of farming dozens of hours without getting the artifact that they wanted. You know, players getting upset that they cannot get the artifact they want, like forcing PvE players to do PvP and vice versa, right? Because whenever you force a PvE player to do PvP, that just makes the experience forced for everyone, literally for everyone. The PvP sweat lords, they get upset that their teammates are just shit, like they're not doing enough damage, they're not doing what they're supposed to, right? And the PvEer that doesn't want to be there to begin with is just getting hammered. Is getting hammered left and right. They're not having a good time. The PvPers are not having a good time. Nobody's having a good time. And if they're going to do this, at least make them easy to obtain, right? I don't think the artifact acquisition should be the hardest part of the process. Don't hold them hostage doing an activity that they don't like, right? For hundreds of hours, I've seen some people, including myself, farm the PvP track for a specific artifact that I wanted, and you just don't get it. You spend every single one of your days trying to farm that artifact doing PvP track, and you simply don't get it. In my opinion, every artifact should be relatively easy yet challenging to get. I don't mean that you just go there, you press one button and you get it. No, there should be some sort of like activity that you do to get the artifact, but not something that it takes you over 20, 30, 40 hours. Like, that is absurd. That is ridiculous. It's way too much time, right? So yeah, the artifact should be relatively easy yet challenging to get, and then, you know, there should be a difficult There should be a difficulty enough for people to feel the challenge that they actually achieve getting that artifact. But the most difficult part, in my opinion, should be unlocking the perks, right? You get it easy, you get it relatively easy, you get the artifact that you want, and you can already start enjoying it. Now, if you want that artifact to become more powerful, that is where the difficulty and the time spending should be put into it, right? You either do it via missions or activities, because right now you spend 95% of the time trying to get the artifact, looking for that one weapon, and you spend like 5% of the time that you spend on doing that just making it more powerful. So you spend all this time getting it, all of a sudden you have it, and boom, you make it super powerful all of a sudden. So let the players get the artifacts easier, right? And make them spend their time upgrading it, so there is like a feel of like gear progression, so you can see how your character is becoming more powerful the more time that you put into this weapon. Right now, it's the opposite. Right now, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it. You get it, boom, it's almighty powerful. And in the meantime, if you wanted this artifact and all the people that got it relatively easy because RNG, now they're enjoying it while you're not, right? And that is a main problem right there. Everybody should get the artifact they want so they can already start playing with it, all right? And then the character, the gear progression should be through upgrading these perks. And many things like this, and the major lack of the end-game content release is why the numbers keep going down. The veteran players are the most vocals in every single game, right? And in every single category, of course. And when you have a track record of releasing buggy patches with no content, and the developers' videos that make absolutely no sense and only show disconnection from the player base, and sometimes even making fun of the player base and basically insulting our patience, you know, they just simply go to Reddit or they make a YouTube video saying how bad the state of the game is. New World is dead, New World is dying, the developers are dog shit, what are they doing, you know? And that floods everywhere. That is all over YouTube, all over Reddit, all over everywhere, in the Discord, you know. And they had to take down the forums because it was just simply so much hate. And all of this hate, it deters any potential new player that would like to come and play the game, right? Because a lot of people don't simply just buy the game. They wanted to do a little bit of research to see if it is worth the time that you spend into the game. The same way that if you're gonna go buy something on Amazon, you go read the reviews to see if you're spending your money and if you want to invest in something that is not just simply, you know, like dog shit. And yeah, it will deter new players. And at this point, they have lost, you know, the player base, we have lost most of their trust and faith in the game and or in the developers, right? And that's why we keep leaving. That's why players keep leaving every single day. That's why the numbers keep going down. For me, being the Hopium and Copium lord that I am, and also the love that I have for this game, I have a great feeling that all of this might change really, really soon. And what do I mean by this? Well, what are the two major problems that we are having right now? One is the lack of endgame content, like I've been saying, and two is the loss of players daily. Since January, February, the developers have been telling us that the biggest changes are yet to come and that they are coming and that they're super, super excited, but they cannot tell us anything until the Summer Game Fest, which will be happening between June 7th and June 10th, right? So in any of those 3 days, AGS will finally reveal their super secret and all of the things that they've been working on. And what are those things that you might think? If you haven't been keeping up in the game and you haven't been doing research and digging around and asking questions because you've been spending your time doing something much better and much better, right? Worry not, I got you covered. So here we go. Well, there's two things that have been confirmed, right? For sure. One, we have the PvP island. And while the PvP island, might not be a lot of content for the long run, I also have a speculation on what it is to come. And the second thing that is being confirmed pretty much, it's console release, right? Console release, it's going to attract a brand new audience. And with the PvP island and the other things that are to come, it's sort of like an end-game content, and then the players' numbers with the console release. All right, well, I'm gonna talk more about this, but I just want you to know pretty much what I'm trying to get at, right? They're creating content because we're lacking content, and they are making it cross-platform and doing the console release to bring in back the player numbers, thus trying to fix both of their main problems, right? But anyways, yes, the PvP island, it probably won't be enough content in the long run, but I have a speculation on what else it is to come besides those two things. First, I'm almost certain that there will be a full raid. A full raid, and what do I mean by a full raid? I mean a full raid like a traditional raid from World of Warcraft or from Final Fantasy, where you get into the raid, there's some trash, there's some cinematics, you get to one boss, you have a very good fight there, mechanically advanced fight, then you kill the boss, and then you continue to kill some trash, and then you get to the next boss. That's what I mean by a traditional raid. And yes, the reason I'm saying that we're going to have one of these traditional raid is because if they're trying to attract a new audience, having a full raid in your trailer slash cinematic will be a very big attraction point. Because if you are an MMO veteran like myself, I remember in every single one of the WoW expansions, whenever they will do the trailer for the next expansion, they will show you the new zones, the new dungeons. They will show you if they were releasing a new class or a new race, and they will also show you the new raid, right? That was like the main selling point, was this brand new race. Well, other than just the class and stuff, but you know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm saying? Having that big raid there is just basically envisioning the players to have a great challenge that awaits for them, and it's going to be the most difficult challenge yet to come, right? So yes, having the raid on the trailer is going to be a big selling point. And on top of that, the community has been asking for a big raid for the longest time, because the Sandworm is a joke, right? That shouldn't even be considered a raid. That is just like a mega trial or something. It's just one boss. It is a mechanically advanced fight, but it's not what people really want, right? You are forced to play one specific weapon or class, and you do the same thing throughout the entire fight. There's no real dynamic, and it's not just like a fun adventure dwelling into a dungeon, trying to clear all of the forces of this big bad guy, and then you finally get to him, and you have a great fight, right? And the reason why I have such strong thoughts about getting a new raid is because the storyline of Elysian Wild is not over yet. Whenever they release the Elysian Wild in Season 3, we barely scratched the surface. Yes, we have a couple of fights with the Beast Lord. We defeated Adiana, which she's not dead yet. She's still very much alive. And the other fight that we had, it was with Medusa. But Medusa is far more powerful than what we think that she is. And if you read some of the lore pages, they will indicate you that she's basically a god. And I guarantee you that she's not dead yet, according to what this thing said. And I'm sure that the raid will have to do something with some other of the Beast Lords, and Medusa probably being the main bad guy. So yes, having the Elysian Wild storyline not being over yet, because according to the lore, it's not over yet, right? And this also gives me an idea of the werewolf and the vampires that happen at the end of the Season 3, which probably that is gonna come maybe in Season 8 later down the road, because I think that Season 7 is still going to be correlated with the Elysian Wild. We're not done there yet, but that is just for the raid, right? We're not done with Elysian Wild. We're gonna get probably a lot of content still coming from that area. On top of that, we are getting a new lightning weapon. This has not yet been confirmed, but they said that they will be releasing a new weapon with like every year. Last year, they released the flail around October time. And by the time that Season 7 comes out, which will be around August, October time, we should be getting a new weapon. And the only weapon element that we are yet to get, it's a lightning weapon. Yes, I understand that we have some other lightning weapons in the game, the artifacts like the spark and the bolt caster, but they're not specifically lightning, you know, like a full-on lightning weapon that you can create artifacts. And you know, I hope you know what I'm saying, right? On top of that, we are also getting cross servers arenas, which they've been talking about is going to help tremendously people queuing from servers that are not that populated. And obviously they need to ramp up the arenas reward if they want people to be playing arenas. And with cross servers arenas being implemented, their next step for arenas will have to be ranked arenas, right? Because you couldn't have ranked arenas without cross servers arenas first. They've also been talking about the soul trials as a repeatable content, because if you guys have been playing the new like revamp level and experience, and you guys have been doing all of the new soul trials, you guys know how fun and challenging they actually are. So them revisiting those things, giving it a higher gear score for gamers, for players that are max level, for them to do it again, either on a daily for the ones that are not that complicated, or maybe on a weekly, as long as they have good rewards, they could be made into a replayable activity very, very easy. We also have the menu, where the activity menu, where we can queue for like OPRs, arenas, dungeons. So they could easily pull the soul trials down there for you to queue for them if they are needed to be done in a group. And if not, then you can just go ahead and do the solo ones. And of course, like I said, we are also getting the PvP island, which is going to be happening in Cutlass Key. And I'm sure that Cutlass Key, with the iteration of the PvP island, is going to be like fully revamped, which I also agree with that. I rather that they revamp the old zones that are completely useless and boring and nobody goes there anymore, rather than creating a brand new zone. Because right now we have a bunch of zones that are dead zones. Nobody goes there because there's no story attached to that place. There's no actual end game happening over there. And why create a brand new zone when we have all of these all of these zones that could be utilized as for end game zones, just to add more content into the game? So yes, with the iteration of the PvP island, which I'm sure is going to have brand new assets like the Elysian Wild, I'm sure that they will also revamp Cutlass Key, because what better time than now whenever they add in the PvP island to it. So while all of these things might not be enough content, again, for the veteran players, it will be more than enough for the console community, right? The console community is going to have all of these things. And this is just the beginning, right? Now that they're done with the remaking of all of the whole level and experience, right? They could focus and shift all of their efforts into making end-game content to keep the existing and the new, community, the new player base entertained for the long run, right? The console will literally have everything we wish for, when we started. Think about the things that we had when we first started playing New World, like 2.5, 3 years ago, right? And now compare it to what the console people are going to have. They will have 15 plus dungeons. They're going to have 2 potential raids. They're going to have everything cross servers arenas, cross server OPRs, cross server dungeons, right, with the group finders. They're also going to have a lot of weapons, and with a brand new weapon coming in, even more reasons for them to come in now. They're also going to have the influence races. They're going to have the artifact farming. They're also going to have mounts. And of course, they will be getting something that we all wish we had when we started playing the game, which is swimming, right? Finally, we are getting swimming in New World. Now, here's the thing that some people might be, talking about, like console players are not really into MMOs. So in my opinion, another way that AGS could attract the console gamers into New World as a whole is by probably re-imaging the MMO RPG genre that New World it is, right? So maybe they should probably change their genre to something like an open world exploration game with multiplayer aspects. You can play the entire game as a single player, and once you get to the end game, if you want to do some of the end game activities, then you group up, right? Which they have been doing a lot. If you have been replaying the entire level and experience, almost the entire game is focused on you doing everything solo. And I play solo most of the times whenever I'm streaming. And yes, you can be 100% a solo player. You don't need anybody else to do most of the activities in your world. And obviously with things like Group Finder, they're making it a lot easier for the solo player to enjoy this group content without having to actually create a group, or without actually having the need to have friends, right? Go figure. And shit, if they're doing all of these things to re-image the whole game, they might as well probably even change the name of the game, maybe to New World Eternum. I'm sure that you guys saw a leak going on around about the new name of the game. Obviously, they took that away really quickly, and they made us look like it was probably like an error or something. But I'm sure that New World Eternum will probably be the brand new name for the game, because they want to like relaunch the game again, right? And having something new in the name of the game, like Final Fantasy Reborn, right, is probably gonna change everything. Because now when people are talking about New World, people be like, are you talking about New World or New World Eternum? Because the New World was like a garbage ass game, but New World Eternum, that is the new and improved game, and it's badass, right? And think about it. you know, a new release with fresh start servers for the console community. That way they won't feel like afraid or intimidated from the veterans, from the veterans, so they can enjoy the new level and experience, you know, surrounded by people of their same level, without having the worry that there's gonna be somebody super geared up waiting for them once they reach max level. Everybody starting at the beach, you know, like the first day, and everything looks pretty and everything works the way that it's supposed to, and with an engaging MSQ, right? Their storyline and a lot of cinematics and all of these things. And of course, by the way, I know that some of you might be thinking it, is it gonna be cross-platform? Will the veterans we be able to play, the PC gamers will be able to play with the console? I am almost 100% certain that it will be cross-platform. It will make absolutely no sense for them to separate the community like that. It just makes no sense. And if the trailer is actually super good or just good enough, which I'm sure it will be because it's Amazon and they will put a lot of money into this marketing video, and I'm sure that the console community will bring enough players, and not just the console community, but also PC members that will love to come back for this new and improved game that they're releasing. I'm sure that there's going to be enough players to rekindle the player base, thus making the player base be big, be good again. And it doesn't need millions of people. You just need a very decent player base, right? 50,000 to 100,000 people playing this MMO. It will be more than enough for everybody to have fun, right? And while the veterans are not getting a massive amounts of contents, I'm sure that the devs will start working on the end game stuff right now, because there's no stopping them, right? They no longer need to go back. They no longer need to remake the whole game from scratch. They no longer need to do anything with the MSQ other than just continue it. They don't need to do anything anymore that is for the brand new players, because that is already being made. So all of their focus should now be shifted into maintaining the game, that the brand new game that they have created, and into releasing new content so it keeps the community alive, right? It keeps the existing and new players active and entertained and wanting to play the game. And I'm sure that there's end game content things that are gonna come for like the PvP players. Ranked arenas is going to be huge, which I'm sure that they're already working on now that cross servers arenas are pretty much done. And for the PvEers, they're going to have the raids. They're going to have an incredible amount of dungeons. They're going to have a lot of things to do, right? And yes, while there's not so much for the veterans to be entertained for like the next 6, 7, 8 months, it will probably be just enough to keep them busy for the next 3 months or the next 4 months once that happens. And then in Season 8, we will be getting the vampires and werewolf, you know, storyline that we've been, you know, hyped about. I'm sure that we're gonna get a brand new zone for the vampires and werewolf, because none of the zones that we have right now, nowhere in the lore says anything about vampires and werewolves. So probably that will actually be a new zone instead of a remake, because for example, before they remade First Light, they released Brimstone Sand. Now they are remaking Cutlass Key, so probably after that they're going to release a new zone that, you know, it basically enforces the lores of the vampires and the werewolves. And yeah, I think that New World has a great future. Right now, it's in a terrible spot, but the reason why it is in such a bad state is because they have had to recreate the game from scratch. They are releasing their brand new game, New World Reborn, New World Eternum, whatever the hell the name is going to be. And I'm going to be here to tell you guys if it is worth to play once it actually, the announcement comes out between the 7th and the 8th. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm done. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Will this be enough for, you know, for the old players to keep them happy, or at least enough to not let the game die until you know, they can release all of the features and necessary content? Well, honestly, we will see. Anyways, remember that I stream every day on Twitch. So if you would like to discuss any of these topics or any subject at all, or just to simply say hi, just drop by. All right, peace.